Hey guys, it's Joe the Android guy. That's a smartphone. That's a tablet. The thing behind me, that's a computer. Are they ever going to cross over? And if so, how? That's our topic for this week's episode of the Android Guy Weekly. So in a couple of previous episodes, we've talked about how smartphones and tablets are getting multiple cores, extra processors, lots of RAM, video processors, cool stuff all built in to do, well, stuff that used to be just computer-based in the past. What are we doing with them? Well, right now, let's face it, that's pretty much still a smartphone. It does phone stuff, it does basic web stuff, PIM stuff, that's personal information management, just for those of you keeping track on the acronym tally sheet. 1 point for PIM. But it's still just a smartphone. The apps are somewhat limited, and I'm showing you Android devices, but the same is true for iPhones and for Windows phones as well. It's still a phone, and the apps are, well, they're really dumbed down. And I don't mean they're dumb, because they're cool, they do neat things, but they're simplistic. So let's move over here to tablets. And yes, this is the Android Guy podcast, so I'm showing you another Android-powered device. If you want to watch Apple stuff, we've got Jaime Rivera, and he's got all kinds of cool Apple stuff. But back to Android, because we love Android. So tablets, even on the Apple side of things, tablets are basically just big smartphones, at least when it comes to apps. Sure, you've got a much bigger battery. Some cases you've got radios in them for like LTE or HSPA plus, or some kind of data connectivity. Not too much of the voice connectivity, even though this has a speaker right there and you could technically use it as a phone. Hello, can you see somebody on a subway or a bus talking on their phone like that? Wow, that'd be a neat hidden video, little funny video. If you guys want to do that, send it on in. We'd get a chuckle out of that. But back on topic. It's still a simplistic operating system. Or a simplistic environment. The operating system is really kind of, complex. It's robust. It's Linux, for goodness sake. You can run Linux on one of those things behind me. You can run Linux on a web server and serve up hundreds, if not thousands of web pages running Linux. And it's lighter weight, and it's arguably more configurable and blah, blah, blah. Definitely cheaper than Microsoft solutions, even though I run Microsoft-based technologies at my day job. But we've simplified it here for this form factor, and really that's starting to limit us. So take a look behind me. I can't run Android, well, could, but not realistically on my computer back there. And even if I could, where's all my video editing stuff? Where's my audio editing stuff? Where's my, high-end games? But that's kind of the crossover app. Games. You can get really good, high-definition, playable games on this. And even better on this. And it's kind of almost to the point where it's the same realism and the same experience that you'd have on a desktop computer. But here on a desktop, I've got to have a mouse. So there's my little mousey pointing device that I have to have in one hand going like this, clicky, clicky, scrolly, scrolly, and this hand on WASD, and it's a pain. This guy, I want to turn, I turn. I want to turn, I turn. I want to go forward, I go forward. I want to go back, I go back. Look at that. Okay. So the controls are really there. And they're a lot better. The sensors, everything is built in. Well, it's built in. I've even got front-facing cameras on these two devices, but I don't even have that on my desktop computer behind me. But I'm getting way off topic. Okay? We've seen a few manufacturers try and bridge the gap from phone and even tablet to computer. You can have desktop docks that have HDMI, that have you can have Bluetooth keyboards and mice and whatnot that hook up to it, and essentially gives you a desktop experience from your smartphone or from your tablet. Now, there are a couple ways to do that. The first way to do that is through some kind of a virtual desktop environment. Now, when I say that, I mean you're kind of like running in a web-based OS where you just have a web browser that has your web apps installed on it. And yes, web apps, especially with HTML5, are becoming much, much more robust. They're becoming really, really well, good, for lack of a better word. But still, look at Google Docs, look at Microsoft Word, look at Google Docs, look at Microsoft Excel. There's still a lot of growing to do. Well, you don't have those Microsoft-like experiences on your tablet with a desktop experience that you have on a desktop with a desktop experience. The same thing goes with Mac-based stuff. You know, I want to use iMovie to make a movie. Great, I have to have that on my Mac. I can't really do that very well over on my tablet or on my smartphone, even when it's docked up to a big screen TV. So there's another way to do it. After we've talked about just kind of virtualizing the experience, kind of Chrome OS, if you will, then you've got an actual real remote desktop. Okay, that's kind of cool, and it has some advantages and some big disadvantages. I've got an app that I run, I like it a lot, called Jump Desktop. My iPhone guys, you friends out there that run the Apple products, they've got the app too. In fact, I think it started on that side of the fence, but who's keeping track? With that, you can RDP, that's Remote Desktop Protocol, into your computer at work, into a computer at home, at school, wherever you've got it configured, so long as you know the address and the ports are open on the firewall, blah, blah, blah. Technical mumbo jumbo here. But you can do it. And once you've got it set up, it's really kind of easy. At that point, as long as I've got an internet connection, I can connect to my computer, my desktop computer, and I can remote into it. Now that computer doesn't have to be here. It could be at work. It could be halfway around the world. It could be at some data center somewhere, hosted as just kind of a virtual environment that I RDP into. And I do that every day. I RDP into computers all over the place. And it gets really annoying and frustrating sometimes because there are so many of them. But if you had one computer that was hosted somewhere else and they took care of all the updates and all the apps and all the everything, and you remoted to it from wherever you wanted with a thin, just a very thin computer, and all it needed was hookups to a monitor, keyboard, mouse, speakers, network connection, and then you log in, it goes across the network to your server, if you will, your terminal session. There you go, great. Well, now you can do that on this because, you know what, this is more powerful than most thin computers out there, and it's a phone. All you need is a bigger screen. Well, that's a piece of cake. All right, so that's the second way. The third way is kind of confusing, kind of cool, which is why we're talking about it in this week's episode. So that topic is kind of dual booting or hybrid booting. And I know that's kind of confusing, but hey, look, I've got 2 cores in here. 2 of them, 2 CPUs. Why not split them? So one processor runs Android and another processor runs Linux. It's being done. Now, this is for like the Uber geeks, Uber geek. So the Uber geeks are looking up to even geekier people than that. But it can be done, which is the cool part. But then we got dual booting. So hybrid stuff, we're just going to leave that for another episode. Wait for it to mature a little bit. Hybrid, or dual booting rather. I turn my phone off, I turn it back on, I get a boot menu, and it says, what do you want to boot into? Well, I'd like to boot into Linux today, thank you very much. Here's my Ubuntu, or here's my Red Hat, or here's my, and this is where it gets really funny. Somebody thought that Android, this version +1, we're assuming it's going to be Android 5, and we assume it's going to be called Jelly Bean. But there were some rumors flying around that Microsoft was kind of getting in bed with Google, or vice versa. Which doesn't make a lot of sense because they really don't like each other that much. But what you do is you'd be able to boot into whatever operating system you wanted to. So if your tablet, you know, you're done with it being an Android-based tablet, great, reboot it, and now you're in a Windows 8 tablet. Woohoo! Sounds kind of weird, but technically possible. All you got to do is basically boot to another mount point. So instead of pointing to one section of your hard drive, that's what we used to call them. Your volume is what Linux likes to call them. You know, you just switch one or the other. Now the downside to it is, generally speaking, you've got to reboot. But once you do that, chances are you can have access to that same volume, so you have access to the same files. Stuff that you work on one side can work on the other side and vice versa. As far as files go. Now apps, that's a different story. So 3 different ways and a hybrid kind of weird way to do it. What's going to happen? Well, I don't know. That's why we're talking about it on the Android Guy Weekly, because I want to know what you think too. So go ahead, pause the show, type your comments in, okay? Because I'm going to bias you with my opinion at this point in time. My opinion, we're going to see something like what Motorola has been doing with their devices where, well, you can plug them into a monitor and you can have a what's called a web top experience, where you have more desktop-like applications. You don't really have desktop applications, but they're desktop-like. Takes advantages of keyboards, mice, bigger screens. You kind of give up some of your touchscreen stuff and your sensors and whatnot, but in any event, you have that experience. So here's what I think, okay? Google has something else going for them. They've got their Chrome OS and their Chromebooks. Okay, why not do that on these guys? So I've got Android and I've got Chrome, and they run side by side, and I can switch between them and make that experience as seamless as possible, so I don't even know that I'm switching between them. So there's one possibility, and I think that would be more logical. I'm sounding like Spock from Star Trek here. Live long and prosper. It would make more sense for Google to go with a Google platform for their, well, desktop or notebook type experience on tablets, if they go that way at all. Is that how I want to see things go? No. No, it's not. What I want to see happen is I want to see the Android OS, the way it is now, continue to grow and develop. I want to see it flourish. I want to see Chrome OS die. I want to see Chromebooks go away. Or, you know what, let's keep them around because we're going to run Android, 6. Key Lime Pie. How about that? You like that? Okay, great. We're going to run Key Lime Pie on them. Key Lime Pie is essentially Android, but screen dependent. So we've got a bigger size of screen. Well, we're doing that already. Things look different on smartphones as they do on tablets, as they do on Google TV. So we've got the 3 screen sizes right now. Well, let's introduce another that has built-in mouse or pointer interface, built-in keyboard. Oh, you know what though? That's going to require apps. It's going to require really good, robust apps. It's going to require apps that are built to work on a variety of screens. It's going to require the development community to adopt that and run with it and make it succeed. And that puts the control outside of the hands of Google. Or does it? There's one little bit that Google has control over. Of course, they've got the SDK, they've got the whole operating system thing, like that's really important. That's sarcasm, guys. Okay, thanks. What they've got is Google Apps, or GAPS as they call it. Now GAPS, that's your market, that's your Gmail, calendar, contacts, that's all of that all packaged together. It's your core PIM stuff. Now it's coming with Google Music, it's coming with your maps and navigation, all of that stuff, that's your GAPS. That is what Google has control over. And if Google goes and makes those things work, really, really work on the current 3 screens, smartphone size, tablet size, TV size, and then they bring in, like a 12 or a 14-inch size, something that's more tablet or desktop style, something that'll work just like a desktop computer will, that's their foot in the door, and then I think the apps will follow. Unfortunately, it's still going to take some time for all the developers out there to get their apps to work with it. Now, Google has made some strides with fragments, not to be confused with fragmentation that everybody's crying about. Oh no, fragmentation, the world's going to end. Hey, look, that's not going to happen until the end of the year, okay? And look at that, I've gone off my screen already. So the Mayans say we got at least another 7-8 months. Don't worry about the world ending. It'll be okay. Fragments are good. Fragmentation is just something to sell newspapers. But I digress. So that's where I think we're going. That's what I think is going to be in Key Lime Pie. It's real early to be making predictions like that, so who knows if they'll come true or not. That's why I'm going on the record right now, so you can come back when Key Lime Pie has been announced, they've shown it off, and you can say, holy crap, that Joe the Android guy, he's a genius! Or, reality, which is just I'm some guy with a camera, and you're a whole bunch of people who know a lot more than me. So now it's your turn. Go down in the comments, Write what you think. We've covered a lot of stuff, so make sure that you're clear with what part you're talking about, whether it's remoting, whether it's dual booting, whether it's hybriding, whether it's web top, whether it's chroma, whatever. Let us know, and let us know why you think your idea is better than my idea, which it probably is, but I want to know why, and so does everybody else who's watching. So go and do that now. Well, before you do that, thumbs up. Big thumbs up for the video, so let your friends know about it. Head on over to Pocketnow.com so we can all share from the news and the other views that are out there, because I'm not the only guy on it. Okay, now you can go and comment. Thanks, do that down below. For Pocketnow, I'm Joe the Android Guy, and this has been another episode of the Android Guy Weekly.